Hey, it's Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker, a special edition Full Court Press podcast, getting you ready for Utah State and Purdue. They tip off Sunday afternoon, 12:40 Mountain Time. And before we get into the matchups between the Aggies and the Boilermakers, Jason, I think we have to talk about Utah State getting its first win in the NCAA Tournament in 23 years. You were there to see it in person. What a game, especially what a second half for Utah State basketball last night in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I have to admit that I was not really a believer in the Aggies being able to pull off this win. I didn't think that TCU was a particularly great matchup, and I think there were a couple areas where I was mistaken on that. I assumed TCU would be a lot better at attacking the rim than they were. But the other thing is the Aggies, they lived up to what they were talking about, like, when they drew the TCU matchup. They're talking about it after that in the press conference, like Danny Sprinkle, Darius Brown, who talked to the media. Like, they said, look, we're going to have to play tougher and more physical, and they did. And yeah, what a fantastic game it was. Outside of I don't know if I want to call it a cold start, because they started 3 of 10, which is not good, but it's not the worst start that you can possibly have. And they got down 8 6 minutes in, but then really from then on, it was pretty much all Aggies, where they ended up with a 6-point lead at halftime. That, I think, was a huge turning point, was flipping that 8-point deficit into a 6-point halftime lead. And then from there, they just responded to every punch TCU threw, and they punched harder. Because, TCU starts with a 4-0 run to start the second half. Utah State went on a 4-0 run themselves, but then 3 or 4 minutes later, Isaac Johnson's going Super Saiyan. And he scored 14 of the Aggies' 16 first, second half. The first 16 points of the second half, Johnson accounted for 14 of them. So in the second half, it was pretty much just all Aggies. And this is the kind of performance the Aggies needed. I think they really needed that to give them, one, to get the win. Because obviously that was, job number one. I know legacy wasn't necessarily on a lot of these guys' minds. Because, most of them weren't even born the last time Utah State had won a tournament game. But they still understood that. They knew that it had been a while. But it was just great all around. Just seeing the Aggies finally get a win. And in that second half, it was finally dawning on me. And the Aggies are up 15, 16, 17 points. I was like, they're really going to do it, aren't they? They're actually going to do it. And, well, by golly, they did.
I know. As we were watching it, after watching everything else that happened with the Mountain West outside of San Diego State, and even then, that was a close game. Those of us who were watching the game together Friday night kept saying, don't pull in Nevada. Don't pull in Nevada. Don't pull in Nevada. Just keep pouring.
Yeah, I know. I had I had that exact same thought. When there was, I don't know, 6. I think it was 7 minutes left, something like that. Where I was like, okay, Nevada was in this exact same spot. Please don't. And then I think a few possessions later, Ian Martinez tried to murder somebody on the court, but just showing that the Aggies just were not going to let up in this game. Because there were several points where maybe TCU could have clawed back in because, to start the second half, TCU cut a 6-point lead down to 2, right there. Maybe a team just jumps out on top of you. Maybe they have the good second half. The Aggies have done that to a couple teams. The Aggies have had it done to them. They led by 3 against San Diego State in the tournament, and we all know what happened in the second half. But it was those responses, after having the lead cut to 2, they went right back to 6. There were 5 or 6. Isaac Johnson, they pushed it to 10. Although then TCU cut it back down to 6. And I was like, okay, is this a chance where things turn around? Because just look at all the other games in the tournament with Nevada, with other teams. How double-digit leads have been cut down and suddenly it's a game again. But it gets down to 6, then Ian Martinez, he hits a big 3-pointer, and the Aggies kept building it from there to where, Ian Martinez or Isaac Johnson or Darius Brown's taking his 5 shots, but making them all at the most timely possible moments, and also dishing out 10 assists. So everybody put their stamp on this game. I know I highlighted Isaac Johnson and Ian Martinez a little bit more in my article, especially Isaac Johnson, to where this was probably his first big game in maybe a couple of months. But really everyone did, because, Great Osobor was causing problems. I think him in the first half was pretty big, to where, that was a close game at that point, and Osobor was making some key shots in that point. So, yeah, just an all-around game and fantastic for the Aggies.
Yeah, obviously a big coming out party for Isaac Johnson. We haven't seen him play like this in an Aggie uniform this year. He's had stretches where he's had impactful moments. He's had stretches where he really helps the team offensively, maybe defensively, grabbing some rebounds or the occasional blocked shot. But my goodness, 19 points, 4 blocks, 3 boards, 5 for 5 at the free throw line. He was on fire. I was polling for him to get at least one more point, because that would have marked the 6th different player for Utah State who over the course of the season has scored at least 20 points, or scored 20 points at least once over the course of the season. And that versatility is really what makes this team so special, is that, Osobor and Brown, those are your main dudes. But on any given night, anybody else can have a big game for USU. And last night, that happened to be Isaac Johnson.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the keys. I can't remember if I said it on our preview before I left here for Indianapolis, but where I talked about how Great Osobor is obviously going to be a big focus, and they were probably going to try and guard him either with their center, and that would potentially leave Isaac Johnson open for some chances. Because I knew the Aggies were probably going to be playing 2 bigs the entire game, because that's TCU. They play big. They can go small, but they don't really go small. They've done it not a whole lot. So my thought was, okay, Isaac Johnson and Khalifa Sacco, there is a very good chance that if Osobor is getting guarded by any one of TCU's like 3 or 4 centers they put in their rotation, that's going to leave Isaac Johnson and Khalifa Sacco opportunities to get open and get easy shots. And heck, in the first half, Khalifa Sacco was doing that, where he had 6 points. It should have been 8. Unfortunately, he missed a dunk there, but made up for it by adding 3 more dunks after his missed one. So he had a big first half where he had 6 points, and I firmly believe he would have done all right in the second half, but Isaac Johnson was just like, don't take him out of the game. Like,
you're right.
Heck, Khalifa Sacco would come into the game, and they'd take out Great Osobor instead of Isaac Johnson. That tells you how good of a half he was having, to where Danny was like, I'm not taking him out. We need him on the floor. So, that was something I think both Sacco and Johnson, I was thinking they needed to have a good game, and they both did. Johnson just happened to have a career night. Sacco had a solid night. And Osobor, most people are focused on him, but he started slinging the ball around. I mean, TCU was like, we're going to test his passing abilities. Okay, yeah, you tested his passing abilities. He just threw an alley-oop lob to Khalifa Sacco on a fast break. Congratulations, you just tested Great Osobor's passing ability. he certainly passed that test with flying colors.
Yeah, fantastic game plan for Utah State defensively, not allowing TCU to get up and down the court. They love to get up and run. They love to create fast breaks off of turnovers. But the Aggies played a very clean game, really limiting the type of turnovers that they had, and going to a 1-3-1 zone that just really kind of stifled TCU and not allowed them to get downhill as much. So it was a great defensive game plan out of that Utah State coaching staff Friday night against a good, athletic, fast TCU team. And now they have to switch gears to face a very different type of team in Purdue, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the Mountain West overall through the first round, we worried about underseeding and not much respect out of the Mountain West Conference from the NCAA Selection Committee. Did the Selection Committee get it right, or did the Mountain West suffer from not having good enough seeds and having to go up against some tougher competition with only San Diego State and Utah State coming out of the first round?
I believe I talked about this in our initial reactions to the seeding, and that was that it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you make a team a 10 seed, well, then they have to face a 7 seed, and a 7 seed is a dang good team. Now, I know every 10 seed is a good team. Like, there's not a bad team in the tournament, but you have if you underseed a team, they have to play a more difficult opponent. That raises the chance that you're going to lose, and so you end up, okay, we underseeded this team and they lost in the first round, and you say, oh, I'm right. Well, not necessarily, because that's a team maybe that should have been playing in the second round, because that's how good both of these teams are.
Yeah, San Diego State and Utah State were the only single-digit seeds out of the Mountain West, and interestingly enough, the only two teams that ended up winning in the first weekend, the first round. I mean,
yeah, like if you made Kansas a 16 seed and then put them up against Purdue and Kansas lost, does that justify making Kansas a 16 seed? No, it means they lost to a really good team, and Colorado State and I'm suddenly forgetting all the teams in the Mountain West, because Colorado State lost to
Texas.
Texas, and then
Nevada lost to Dayton.
New Mexico lost to Nevada lost to Dayton. That's really the biggest one, because New Mexico and Colorado State. I mean, the Rams did get a win in the play-in, so that kind of helps. You would have loved to see Boise State get a win in the play-in as well. And I think those ones, like, you can kind of carry on and cry about the fact that Colorado State and Boise State were in the play-in. But when I talk about, self-fulfilling prophecy, like, you're playing another 10 seed, you should win that game if you're good enough. So that's just, Colorado State proved that it really didn't deserve to be in the play-in, I think. It shouldn't have been there. They should have been higher up. Boise State, maybe you can argue they shouldn't have been in the play-in, but they lost in the play-in. So that's harder to justify. But for teams like New Mexico, even Nevada, it's like they were pretty badly underseeded, especially Nevada. And Nevada nearly proved that, but unfortunately they decided to count their chickens before they were hatching, and Dayton obviously catches them off guard there. So in the end, like, Nevada's the biggest one the Mountain West, I think, will regret as far as games. But obviously it's still good for the conference that they are, at this point, 3 wins in with the potential for 2 more come Sunday.
Yeah, as of right now, 9 units to the Mountain West Conference. Colorado State, Utah State, San Diego State, each with two games played. Everybody else just one. And Utah State and San Diego State hoping for more. San Diego State, the 5 seed, but they still struggled against UAB. And I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but on Sunday they face an upset-minded Yale, who's a 13 seed, who looked really good the other day. But I wonder if San Diego State's physicality can be able to win the day for them and get themselves to the Sweet 16 once again.
Well, the biggest advantage for San Diego State is that when they face mid-majors, they're going up against teams that are not very well equipped to stop Jaden Ledee. Now, there's not a whole lot of teams in the country that are well equipped to stop a guy like Ledee. He's an All-American for a reason. But Yale's going to have a really hard time, just like UAB did. And so that's very much going to play in San Diego State's favor. They really need Ledee to carry them. In some cases, like, there are times where San Diego State, like, if some of their other guys are producing, then they can, that's when they're best. Like when they played Utah State, everyone was playing solidly, but against UAB, it was Jaden Ledee, and that was mostly it for a lot of that game. So it kind of builds a bit of a buffer for the Aztecs, because it's like, okay, if Jaden Ledee has a good game, there's every chance they can win, and they don't have to have this complete team effort. Now, if they win and move on, I don't know who their potential opponent would be in the next round, but the further along you get, the more team performances you have to have. You can't be relying on that one, super dominant player. So for now, I think San Diego State, they're going to have matchup advantages, but we'll see how things go once presumably they get to the Sweet 16. We don't know. hopefully, I guess, for the good of the conference, San Diego State will pull off another win here. And maybe the Aggies will pull off a historic upset, but we'll have to find that out tomorrow.
Yeah, if San Diego State were to win, they would face the winner of UConn and Northwestern in the Sweet 16. But yeah, let's get to Utah State and Purdue. You had a chance to see a little bit of Zach Edey. I don't know how much of that Purdue game you watched that preceded the Aggie game, but I know you've had a chance to visit with their players, their coach. You had a chance to visit with Utah State players and Danny Sprinkle. And now all the attention for USU is now focused on the Purdue Boilermakers. And there is nobody in the Mountain West that can compare even closely to Zach Edey. So it's kind of tough for Utah State, at least in my mind, to try to come up with comparisons. And this is what we did against this opponent on this day. Now we just have to try to carry that through and how we're going to attack Purdue. So this is not an easy task for Utah State, trying to face somebody with 7'4", 300 pounds that's just a monster in the paint.
Yeah, and he is absolutely a monster. And I did get to go in and watch. I went and sat in some of the seats around the court watching that Purdue Grambling game, mostly just out of curiosity. I was like, hey, I've seen this guy on TV. What's he like in person? And my goodness, yeah, monster's not the worst name for it. And, I mean, there was one move where I was kind of on a baseline where not only was he like overpowering a guy, he then spun around the guy, was quicker than the man guarding, or kind of took advantage of him just trying to wall up. He just spun around him and then just threw down a jam. And as everyone was going back up the court, I looked back up at the basket, and it was still shaking like 20 seconds after Edey had dunked it. And I was like, my goodness gracious, that is not a human being. Like, it was insane. It's like, but yeah, it's like, and so there is a lot of focus. Now, you mentioned comparisons, and there's really only one comparison, but it is only like in principle. Because right, there's not a comparison for a 7'4", 300-pound man. And really the comparison there is Jaden Ledee, or really even on their own roster, Great Osobor. And I have to emphasize again, this is in principle, and that is mainly the principle of you will double team them. That will happen. Zach Edey has faced that double team more intensely than Ledee or Great Osobor will even dream of, and faced a lot more different defensive strategies, but that's kind of the desperation that teams would throw at Osobor and Ledee. The Aggies will be throwing that same desperation at Zach Edey. And so it will be new to them because, the Aggies didn't have to be desperate about Ledee. They matched up Osobor on him. But there's nobody on this roster that matches up with Edey. You just have to pray that he misses shots. I know we spent a lot of time talking about stopping Edey. And Isaac Johnson, he'll be starting the game. He was asked about trying to stop Zach Edey, and his answer was mostly, I can't. You may not be able to. So we can play that clip of him just being asked that.
Sometimes you can't. But I think what we can do is stop the rest of the team from doing some of the things that they do. I guess you can stop them down low. Not much you can do when it's up high. So we'll do our best.
The little laugh at the end, like, yeah, okay, good luck.
Yeah, it's like that. That is kind of what it is. And I mentioned some of this on social media because they were talking about trying to stop Edey, and it was like, what do you do? And the two keys that I kind of gave, and this is just from me having watched them for a couple of years. I watched them against Farley Dickinson last year, which that game went pretty well for those guys. And other games where Purdue has struggled at times. Grambling had moments where they were doing okay against Purdue, keeping it close. And really your two keys are, I'm trying to remember exactly. One is hope he misses that turnaround hook shot, because you're never blocking that hook shot. Don't even try. And then the other big key, though, is don't let his teammates beat you. Because the thing is, Edey's had games where he's scored 25, even 35 points this year, and Purdue lost. There's a game where Edey had 35 points and Purdue lost. He can dominate, and you can still win. So the key for me in this game, and I'd emphasize this the most, is don't try and beat Zach Edey. Beat the Purdue Boilermakers. That's what's going to get you through this game. Don't try and come up with new ways to stop Edey. Just guard him as tough as you can. Don't foul him too much, mostly to not get you in foul trouble, because if you send him to the line, he's actually not that great of a free throw shooter. At least I saw him miss like 6 free throws. Or at least it felt like 6 or 7 free throws against Grambling. He was really having a rough time hitting some free throws. But Isaac Johnson can't be getting in foul trouble. Khalifa Sacco, he's currently observing Ramadan, and that's 2:40 local time. He's still going to be in the middle of his fasting. He's not going to be playing a whole lot in this game. So you got Isaac Johnson, 1, maybe 2 stints of Khalifa Sacco for like 2 or 3 minutes before he's not going to have enough energy for it to be safe for him to play. And then maybe you can throw in Carson Templin to get a few cheap fouls, and maybe you go all the way down to Jackson Grant. But these guys can't afford to be getting in foul trouble against Edey. And as long as you don't get into foul trouble, and as long as you're not letting everybody else get involved, the Aggies should be perfectly fine with Edey putting up 30, even 40 points. Just don't let anybody else beat you. Don't get into foul trouble to where you can't respond on offense. And the Aggies have a chance because I think they have ways where they can beat Purdue, but they just need to make sure that Purdue's not beating them too much by getting a good inside-outside combination with Edey and with some of the guards that Purdue has.
Yeah, and looking at some of the teams that had some success, and granted there were only 4 of them all year who were able to defeat Purdue, but there was one other game that went into overtime that I thought was interesting. But looking at those games, like what did those teams do that were able to get them over the top against Purdue? And there's some common themes among them. And granted, I didn't look at every game on Purdue's schedule, just focused on a few of them. But the common themes seem to be your big men, they foul out. You use up every available foul for everybody on your roster with size. And then your guards have phenomenal games. And so do what you can to throw as much size and weight at Edey as possible because he's just going to demand that. But as you said, it's got to be the other guys that step up and provide that offense and provide the other ways to get the victory. And it was interesting to hear the comments today on Saturday from great Osobor and Darius Brown. Isaac Johnson kind of alluded to it, but sound like Osobor and Brown kind of expanded on that as well, that it's going to be important for everyone else to step up defensively in trying to stop Purdue.
I mean, obviously, speaks for itself. Purdue's a really good team, and we're going to have our hands full, but I feel like we just need to be aggressive in everything that we do tomorrow, whether that's trying to deny the post or when we do deny the post, don't let it get back out. So we'll try to do our best in making sure that we can limit what we can control, control what we can control, and everything will take care of itself.
Darius?
Yeah, I mean, Purdue's a really good team, and they were number 1 in the country for majority of the year for a reason. So I think it's just the plan is just be aggressive. You have to be aggressive with everything, and that's you have to do all the little things. The 50-50 balls we have to get all of those, and we have to do our best to keep them off the boards. And they usually out rebound everybody they play, so we have to try to attack the boards, and that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and rebounding is one of the areas where Utah State sometimes yields, not necessarily on purpose, but they don't tend to out-rebound too many of their opponents. It depends on the size and the matchups, but this is going to be one of those where securing those rebounds has got to be paramount for USU.
The funny thing is that when I was looking at the games where Purdue lost, Purdue lost a game. Like you look at the games they lost, they still out-rebounded their opponent crazy. Like Wisconsin, they out-rebounded them 39-27. Northwestern, they out-rebounded them 47-26. 36-22, Ohio State and Nebraska, 31-27. Purdue lost all 4 of those games. So it's like I don't know, like, is it weird? Like, you don't have to focus on, like, rebounding numbers. Obviously, like, getting important rebounds, I think, may be the key there. Because the thing with TCU is you look at the stat sheet in that game, I'm pretty sure TCU out-rebounded the Aggies overall, like 41 to 30-something. And TCU had 21 offensive rebounds. But TCU also only had 19 second-chance points on 21 offensive rebounds. Meaning less than half the time TCU got an offensive rebound, they got points off of it. At least based on, just raw numbers there. So getting rebounds is going to be big, especially because when you allow offensive rebounds, that's when you tend to foul. You tend to foul and you tend to give up wide open threes. So it's getting the right rebounds, not necessarily dominating the boards. You don't need to out-rebound Purdue. Just get the important rebounds and then get out and run and get some easy points. And I think this can be an interesting game because the Aggies, if they get those boards and they get out and run, Zach Edey's the slowest man on the court. So get out and run and then get the ball. Maybe, Great Osobor runs the floor pretty well. So if he gets out and run, Purdue's going to have 4 guys back because Edey's going to be relatively slow up the court. And you can outrun him and maybe get some 4-on-4 or 5-on-4 situations. Now, the rest of Purdue's pretty athletic. I mean, they can still play with pace even if Purdue's slugging up or if Edey is slugging up and down the court. But I think the Aggies can make some things happen in transition, provided they get the right rebounds and enough of them. They're going to get out rebounded by Purdue, but get the right rebounds, get out and run, and then maybe grab some cheeky offensive boards too, if you can get them from around Edey.
Interesting comments from Coach Matt Painter today on Saturday, talking about Utah State. I believe, was it the question that you posed to him about what Utah State might do to try to guard Edey?
I asked him that, and he went on a long tangent explaining an entire philosophy around double teams. And I tried my best to not look like my eyes were glazing over as he was explaining it to me.
Well, here's his different concepts of what he has seen and maybe trying to anticipate what Utah State might try to do Sunday afternoon against Zach Edey.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things that can happen. You can watch who they've doubled, even though there's not guys like him in their league. There's some guys in their league that have an All-American in their league that's 6'8", 6'9", who's a different type of a player. So you can watch them, how they've dealt with low-post players, even though the game doesn't present that as much as it used to, say, 10, 15 years ago. And then you also have to be, the expectation has to be, there could be something they've never shown before. And I know it's a, quick turnaround, but they weren't preparing for Purdue going into the TCU game. You know what I mean? They're preparing for TCU. So now they've got 48 hours. So you look at what they do, and this is how you handle any opponent. You see what they do. You think that's what they're going to do. But you also prepare, which we just did, for a lot of different things. So we have a series, you can double from the top. You can double from the bottom. You can cover down ball side. You can come traditional. You can wait till he dribbles and scrapes. You can stay one-on-one. If you got something else, then you're better than I am. That's about it, right? So it really comes down to decision-making on his part, and then our guys getting where they're supposed to be. So, we have rules to what we do, just like they have rules to doubles. The doubles come, and then you can set it up differently, so the rotations change. And now they have to be able to – the guys that are really good at doubling the post or playing there, they give a great effort, first of all. They're quick with their doubles. They're aggressive. They don't foul. And then they set their rotation, and they know what they're doing. So that's why we try to change up things and mix things up so the rotations are a little bit different. But that's about it, when it comes down to it. But for us, it's taking care of the basketball and him getting the ball where he needs to get it. And when we take care of the basketball and we keep getting quality shots, we really help ourselves.
There it is. The dissertation from Matt Painter.
Yeah, definitely. So, it's – it really he touched on it where, Utah State can't really game plan for Purdue. They'll do a quick scout. They'll talk about things. It's going to be – it's going to be like Danny Sprinkles talked about it over and over this year, where at certain times of the year it just comes down to your principles. Like, you got to be you, and you got to be the best you. And if you're that, then you can beat teams. And Purdue's facing the same situation. They're not going to be able to scout Utah State very much. They'll know the bare minimum, and Purdue's just going to have to be the best Purdue. And if they do that, then they'll win. If Utah State's the best Utah State, then they can potentially win this one. If both teams are at their best, and you get a heck of a basketball game. But and then at that point, it's just, all right, who has the ball last, maybe. But yeah, you just got to be the best you. Utah State's going to throw. They have different things where they try and double people. Probably some things that are similar to how they doubled Ledee. I don't know how they can do that quite as much, because Ledee would get the ball in different places than Edey does, where Ledee was willing to get the ball back a little further, like a little further away from the basket. Edey is going to get the ball at the elbow and below, and at that point it's kind of hard to double without giving up an easy pass. Like, I saw Edey make incredibly easy passes because, he's 7'4", he can see everything on the floor. Because he's got that bird's eye view, and if he sees you double team, he just looks around, who's open. Obviously he has enough trust in his teammates. He probably knows where they're supposed to be anyway, so it's easy for him to look around, see where they're at, confirm, throw a pass, wide open corner three. So the Aggies are going to have to be more creative with their doubles, creative in how they prevent those post-entry passes to begin with, because that's the best defense on Edey, is when he doesn't have the ball. And keeping the ball out of his hands. He can't score if he doesn't have the ball in his hands. He can't hit a post hook if he doesn't have the ball in his hands. So that's the best defense the Aggies will play, is before he even gets the ball. And then the best defense after that is pray that he misses.
Right. They're looking at you talked about just being the best you. In the first game in these tournaments, teams have the benefit of a couple of days of scouting and preparing and watching film, and then if you're good enough to win in advance, you've got. Coach Painter said 48 hours. It's actually less than 48 hours when you look at it to prepare for your next opponent. And so it's coming down to what can we do that we're good at? How can we be the best that we're at? And it sounded like Coach Sprinkle kind of hits on that as well, that kind of trying to compare the two teams, that there may be some quite a few similarities between the two teams, which could be in Utah State's benefit.
Yeah, hopefully a little bit helps, because our post guys, at our, we've been kind of guarded, probably maybe not to the extent of Edey, but Great's been double and triple team and swarmed all year. A lot of the offensive sets, we steal a lot of sets from Coach Painter, and his staff, and we did at Montana State too. But it's going to be, hopefully just like our style of play and the way we try to feed the post top down too, just like they do 90% of the time. And, hopefully some of that, helps in the scouting preparation.
Yeah, so it does, help. Familiarity helps when it comes to quick turnarounds, because, in the Mountain West tournament, they probably didn't have to go over too much in the scout and the game, plan, because they'd already done 2 game plans and 2 scouts on those teams. So in this case, some familiarity with the stuff that Purdue runs is going to help. But obviously it is just going to be a new experience for the Aggies, because they're used to being on the side where the other teams have to throw double teams and triple teams at the post guy. They're not necessarily very well versed in executing that. And so it's going to be a quick learning experience. They're going to have to learn things very quickly, and they're going to and if they don't learn them quickly, then they're going to lose this game, and they're going to find themselves down 15 points in the first half to Purdue. And you get down like that, and there's not too many ways back up, because at that point you're probably in foul trouble, and their guards are getting hot from 3, and you guys and the Aggies would probably be cold at that point. So they need to have a quick learning experience on just the crash course of guarding this 7'4" monstrosity, not letting his teammates get involved, and then finding ways to attack Purdue's defense, which, again, if there's an advantage the Aggies have in this game, it's that I very much think they can attack Purdue's defense effectively. We're just going to have to see how effectively. Can they repeat a lot of what they did with TCU, where they were able to score in the paint, hit tough as nails layups. Like there were so many layups where it was like that had no business going in, but it did. Can they repeat that? And then can they hit outside shots? Because they hit enough outside shots against TCU. So they can repeat those things, which I think they can. They'll be fine on offense. But it's going to have to be paired with really good defense, or this is going to be quite the roller coaster of a game.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to watch the in-game adjustments from this coaching staff for Utah State. How do they adjust? How do they tweak? How do they change things as this game gets going? As Utah State gets into a real-life scenario now, having to try to contend with somebody of Edey's size, but also that inside-out. What are their guards really going to look like for Purdue? But I think we've spent a lot of time focusing on what Purdue can do offensively, but what about their defense? As you've just started to allude to, Utah State may have some opportunities in attacking Purdue in their style of defense, but Danny Sprinkle gave some additional thoughts on that Purdue defense that Utah State will be facing Sunday afternoon.
He does. We got to try and pull him out a little bit, whether it's ball screen or getting our bigs out there shooting. Because, like you said, if he's 10 feet from the rim, that's a big old dude you got to shoot over. And, so hopefully we can get him pulled out a little bit, but we also got to go at him too. I thought even Grambling, they were aggressive. You're not going to make all of them, but even if you can get him to contest it and you get over the top of him, you might be able to offensive rebound on that backside if you do miss. And so, we got to continue. We got to be us. It's too late in the season to try and put in a new offense or do something other than be us. And, we're at our best, as when we're getting stops and turnovers and getting that thing going in transition.
And I think this is where Mason Falslev can be a very important piece here, because his aggressiveness in getting to the rim could be key. Maybe Ian Martinez as well, because those are probably your two best slashers to the rim. I don't know how much Edey is actually going to guard Osobor in the post. It's kind of a mystery. I'm not 100% sure. There's a couple of different guys they could probably put on him, especially because Osobor is going to be playing power forward, where Edey's going to be playing center. Although maybe they try and put Edey on Osobor, because if Isaac Johnson's out there, then suddenly, stretch 5, you don't want Edey out there standing in the corner. That's not very effective. So that'll be a little internal chess match, kind of like it was with TCU, where there's the question of, how's TCU going to guard both of their bigs? But, as I was talking about with Mason and Ian, like if you can draw a couple of fouls, and you're going to have to be aggressive, and you're going to have to go up there and realize that, Edey's probably going to eat a couple of your shots for a nice afternoon snack. But a couple of those times where you draw a foul and maybe you hit a tough shot, those are going to be, rewarding, so long as you can stay aggressive and finally get those, and also try and limit the times that you have your shot swatted into the third row. So try and find the right balance of aggression, but also respect for the fact that he's 7'4" and you're 6'3".
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Edey's comments about where if it's Isaac Johnson that's in the game, trying to the Aggies trying to attempt to stretch the floor using his size as an outside shooter. Osobor would need to do something outside as well to draw Edey out of the paint, but it's not something he's unfamiliar with. He's faced that a little bit before already in the season.
Without getting too specific into it, like I said, we've dealt with a bunch of different styles all year. We've dealt with the shooting 5, we've dealt with the post-up 5, we've dealt with the rebounding opposite dunker 5, every single style we've played against. So we're ready for everything.
Yeah, they've handled most challenges that have been thrown at them pretty well.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's people want to say, okay, you do this and this can neutralize him and this and that. And it's okay, they've faced literally everything. You think teams haven't tried something new? Double teaming him this way, doing that, trying to draw him out of the paint. It's okay, they have ways to counter this. And they're 30-4 regardless.
Yeah,
they're a good team. Now they're mortal. You can beat them. That's the thing. Is when you need to understand, there's both this mix of Purdue is a dang good team, and they know what teams are going to try and do, and will try and counter what the Aggies will do. But there's teams that have had success. Grambling had success at times. Farley Dickinson beat Purdue last year, and they didn't have a big man near the caliber that Utah State has, multiple of them, Isaac Johnson or Great Osobor. So there's room for the Aggies to win this. I'm weirdly almost as more confident the Aggies can win this game than I was they were going to beat TCU, which is probably a bad thing because now you feel overconfident. But I feel like if the Aggies are able to limit Edey enough, and if they don't let all the other players go off, like their point guard Braden Smith or Lance Jones,
AG1 works by obsessing over potency, absorbency, and nutrient.
What just happened?
Sorry, I had a weird. That was on me. I had a weird audio just this out of nowhere coming through. But I carry on.
It happened the same time I also touched my earbuds, which sometimes plays things off my phone.
Oh.
It's like I legitimately thought I accidentally hit play.
Yeah.
Of course, usually when I do that, it starts playing the last song I was listening to on one of my apps. So.
Yeah, okay. No, but you're talking about Braden Smith, and he's an outside shooter.
Yeah,
he's a scorer, not very big, but he averages 12.5 points. 5.5, almost 6 rebounds, and 7.5 assists per game. So he's a player.
Yeah, and they've got some good outside shooters overall. Braden Smith, he shoots 43% overall. Lance Jones, solid 36%. Fletcher Lawyer, he's at 44. They got a bunch of guys shooting 30-40% from three. But the Aggies, as long as they can keep up what's generally been a good 3-point defense. And obviously don't let Edey go off. There's room for the Aggies to win this game. It's going to require a game just as good as they played against TCU, probably even better in some areas, especially in defensive rebounding. But there's a formula. It's just a really tough one to hit because obviously everyone knows the formula for beating Purdue, but only 4 teams have actually pulled it off. Which tells you just how hard it is to beat this team.
Yeah. Zach Edey cannot score every point for Purdue to win the game. He's going to be a major force to be reckoned with. But you're right. It's and Isaac Johnson is correct. Great Osobor, Darius Brown as well. They've said it that it's you have to keep all these other guys in check, which won't be easy. I know we spend most of the time talking about Edey, but as you've just said, they've got other guys who are shooters, but they're not like outstanding, big, long, tough to contend with guys. I think Utah State can handle. I think Utah State has advantages at every other position, all the way down to the sixth man. It's just Zach Edey is such a big difference maker, and that will be the big key. If Utah State can slow him down some, you're not going to eliminate what he does. But if you can slow him down a little bit and keep other guys in check, that's the recipe, I believe, for Utah State, which is absolutely, I agree, it's absolutely possible. It's going to be a big hill to climb, but it is absolutely possible. It was the way this team played Friday night, carry that into Sunday, it could be a really fun matchup between the Aggies and the Boilermakers.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. If the Aggies play physical, they do have pretty much an advantage at every other position. Where I don't know if Braden Smith can handle, Darius Brown or Lance Jones, Ian Martinez, and all these other guys. I think the Aggies can find dominance in some of these other players. It's just don't let Purdue do their thing where Edey dominates inside and you spend so much time focusing on him that suddenly you're leaving 43% 3-point shooters wide open in the corner. Because that's where Purdue's going to know. You spend so much time worrying about this, hook shot that Edey's hit 4 of them already, that you then give up a wide open 3, and then you're playing on your back heels the whole time. And then you're mad about that, and then you're not playing as efficient on offense, and Edey blocks you, and then they're off and running, and then Edey may not be involved in that play, but they get a fast break, bucket. The Aggies need to play their game, play it effectively, and we've already gone over all the cues about Edey, so if the Aggies play their best game, they can beat Purdue. If Purdue plays their best game, then, there's a reason they're the number 3 team in the country, according to basically everybody. But the Aggies have, a shot at this one, especially you look at Purdue, they've been exposed in the tournament a couple of times.
Right.
Like, their formula isn't impenetrable, especially in the tournament. They lost to a 16 seed last year. A couple years back, they did make it to the Sweet 16 a couple years back, but then they lost to St. Peter's. They were one of the teams that got beaten by a 15 seed. So there's, ways that you can beat this team. You just need to execute those and get a little lucky. The Aggies can certainly use both.
Yeah, absolutely could use both. For Purdue's side, interesting comments from Coach Matt Painter. This is, as you've detailed, this is a team that has a history of underperforming based on how they come into the tournament and not particularly doing great in the tournament. Trying to say the right things, trying not to overlook the opponent, and trying not to overlook Utah State either for Sunday afternoon.
Everybody in the NCAA tournament is really good. Now when you go to that 32, everybody is that much better. They're a really, really good basketball team. They are well coached. This is going to be a dogfight, all right? It's going to be a dogfight. So we've had a lot of experience here, all right, and we've had some disappointing days. Like, there's no way we are looking past these guys. These guys are real. If you watch that game from TCU, TCU is tough. They're hard-nosed. They're well coached. They got big-time players. TCU's got big-time players. They beat quality teams in the Big 12, all right? They handled them. So we know this is going to be really difficult. They have a great point guard. They have a great big. And they got a bunch of other dudes that can really, really play. And like I said before, Danny Sprinkle is as good of a young coach or any coach at any age as there is in the country. Very few people can do what Danny Sprinkle just did. Very few. All right? He has nobody that played for him last year. Like, you go watch us run stuff and do stuff. I mean, I got a bunch of guys that played for us. Everybody is on the same page. We get it. Like, we get it. How the hell do they get it? And they've been working since June like that. It's because they got a great coach.
High praise from Coach Matt Painter for Danny Sprinkle, and well-deserved for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And, Purdue's on the Virginia Revenge Tour. You remember how the Cavaliers, they had the same thing happen to them that Purdue did. And obviously they were the first. Purdue suffered that same embarrassment. They're once again a 1 seed. Once again, like, they have been wire to wire a top 4 team, dang near wire to wire top 3. They were number 4 in the AP poll once for 1 week. But other than that, wire to wire, top 3 team in the country, number 1 for like 5 or 6 weeks. This is a team that is dang good, and now they're ticked because they know all the chatter. There were probably a lot of people who, myself included, heck, in my bracket, I picked them to lose in the second round because, I don't trust Purdue. I don't think Zach Edey can carry this team. I don't think the whole team can rely on big. Like, they hear all that chatter. They hear all the people remembering, hey, you lost to FDU last year, and they will not be overlooking anybody. You will have to beat this team because you outplayed them, and not because they overlooked you and weren't ready for you. They will kick your teeth in if you're not ready for. Like, Grambling, kind of felt sorry for him because Purdue. In the first half it was kind of close. And then in the second half, Purdue was like, "Oh yeah, we're better. Goodbye."
Right. Yes.
So the Aggies need to make sure. That they don't just hope that Purdue doesn't play as hard. What they'll hope for is that they miss shots because there's a difference. Purdue, they're going to play hard. Maybe they don't execute. The Aggies will try and force Purdue into executing worse than they normally do. Hope they miss a few extra shots, and then when you get those chances, the Aggies need to make sure they're capitalizing because there's a very thin margin of error, essentially none, against a team of this caliber.
No, yeah, they're very balanced, scoring inside out, contributions from a number of different guys. They've got 4 different guys that average double figures in scoring, but still, I think this is still a game Utah State can be competitive in and should give themselves a chance. Purdue opened as 10.5-point favorites late Friday night, early Saturday morning. At the time that we're recording this on a Saturday afternoon, it's already moved to 11.5 for Purdue. So a lot of the eyes are on Purdue. The pressure's on them to perform. Utah State, right now, they're playing on house money. They did something that they haven't been able to do in a long, long time. Not to say they're just going to be happy to be there, but the pressure's not on Utah State to perform. The pressure's on Purdue, and so Utah State can play a little bit more freely and have some fun. And that's how they played on Friday. They had fun going out there and competing hard, but playing like they absolutely belong. And not only belong in the tournament, but deserve to play multiple games in the tournament. And certainly a lot of attention on Isaac Johnson and the game that he had Friday night, deservedly so. And it was a ton of fun with all the fish references that the national broadcasters had later in the second half as he continued to cook. But it was really interesting to hear him talk today in his press conference about his journey to Utah State and why he redshirted, Jason. That was really an interesting story that he shared today.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're going to play the clip just now, but yeah, he touched on it last night, and then it was kind of a follow-up to where he went through a really rough time. Apparently, returning from his mission and going to Oregon, and I guess just didn't fit. I don't know if it was just a rough transition going back into basketball. Culturally, very different up there in Oregon from Utah, where obviously he grew up and played for. I suddenly can't remember who he played for. One of the high schools down south.
Yeah, Salt Lake area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I suddenly can't remember which one, but not too important. But yeah, he just needed to come home, and even coming home didn't fix that. Being in a familiar culture didn't fix it for him, and the red shirt was as much as it was probably all. I think we all just said it was a development thing, and you got Dan Akin and Trevin Dorius. So yeah, you said Isaac Johnson for a year, and Danny Sprinkle probably assumed that too because he was actually asked about it, and Danny was like, I didn't pay attention to it. But for Isaac, that redshirt year meant a ton to him, where he just needed a year to, as he put it, learn to love basketball again, and also getting help. That's another big thing. We've talked about mental health on this show and brought some people on to talk about it. And Isaac Johnson was one of those guys that, some guys miss a year because of physical injury, and Isaac kind of needed to take a year off for, mental injury doesn't sound right, but, that kind of thing where he needed to get his mind right. Seems like he's doing better, and this kind of game, I think, really helps boost his confidence.
Yeah, it was a really cool story. And if you will, the full entirety of his discussion on that, you can find it on the podcast feed. We've had the full Utah State press conference from Saturday afternoon in Indianapolis. One last thing for me to highlight, too, another big accomplishment besides Johnson's career night was a record-tying performance from Darius Brown, tying the Utah State regular season assist record.
Yeah, this was something that it's been on my radar for a while because I knew, even the beginning of the year where he was averaging 7-8 assists a game, he kind of cooled off a little bit to where he was averaging 6.5. I think he's at 6.5, maybe bumped up a little closer to 7 after last night's game. But I looked at his total before they went to the tournament or the NCAA tournament, saw that he needed 10 to tie the record. I was like, well, I don't think he can, obviously. I knew he could get 10 assists, but I didn't think it was particularly likely because that's, still on the high end even for him. But then all of a sudden we're 11, 12 minutes left in the game, and, Utah State social media was putting it out. You even got a text from the SID giving me a heads up, that it was maybe going to happen, that he had 10 assists and there was 11 minutes left to play, and he'd already tied the record. I was like, I didn't even think it was possible it was going to happen. I didn't think it would be likely that he'd manage to pull off a 10-assist game in the NCAA tournament. And, yeah, it's just crazy. But, yeah, obviously it's a season-long accomplishment for him, and it just goes to show that Darius Brown, even though he's going to be a one-year wonder at Utah State, there's still that wonder attached to it. Legend, I think, is Danny Sprinkle mentioned it last night, or I guess technically earlier this morning. To be honest, at least it was out here. I don't know if it was past midnight. It was 1 a.m. when we were interviewing Danny Sprinkle after the game. But he's the Darius Brown has established himself as a legend. Both his assists, where he gets 1 assist tomorrow, he owns the record. He'll already have one of the more iconic shots in at least in regular season history for the Aggies, and possibly in Spectrum history. Shots that happened in the Spectrum, more game-winning shots to boot, and obviously he's part of this very special Aggie team. So it's just one more feather in Darius Brown's cap. It's been a short story, but it's been a dang good short story for Darius Brown here at Utah State.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And this was his reaction to hitting that mark on Friday night in Indianapolis.
It's great. It's great to accomplish something like that, and obviously assists is probably the biggest thing that you cannot do without your teammates. You know, they're the ones that make the shots for me. I just do my best to get them the ball in the right position, and it's even more wonderful to win while doing it. So it's a wonderful accomplishment.
Absolutely is wonderful, and he's been a wonderful player for Utah State, a great ambassador for the program. Love to watch him play. Great defender. Besides just understanding the flow of the game, when he needs to step in offensively to score, he can do that. I mean, the massive 3-point shot with the shot clock winding down from about the logo in the second half. So I mean, this guy just continues to make big shots and help his teammates in a lot of amazing ways, and it'll be fun to see if he can do that again on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and the Aggies will need him. They need him to have a big game. They need like a 15, 16, 17-point game, you know. 10 points, 10 assists is nice. Well, heck, if he gets another 10 assists, that means 10 people hit shots off his passes, which I guess would be just as good. But you feel like you do kind of need one of those 20-point Darius Brown games where, you know, Osobor's probably going to have his hands full trying to finish shots in the paint with Zach Edey running around. So Darius Brown's going to need to hit some threes, and some of these other guys are going to need to hit some outside shots. Ian Martinez is going to have another good game where he had his third 20-point game just in March. I think he's had 5 or 6 on the year. He's had 3 in March alone. So Ian Martinez is kind of coming along in the most important month of the year. But, yeah, just it's pretty insane from Darius Brown where, yeah, he's done a lot in quite a short period of time, and he'll be long remembered.
Yeah, deservedly so. So pregame, I don't know exactly when they've set the pregame for our sister station KVNU on Sunday. Tip-off's at 12:40, so it'll probably be sometime a little after 11, I would guess, based on how things went on Friday night. So 11 a.m. shortly after there would be when that pregame coverage on KVNU will begin. Streaming, there'll be the whole pregame will be streaming on KVNU, and then because of Westwood One having the rights to these tournament games, KVNU will not be streaming the audio, but there will be audio streamed on 106.9 The Fan. So on 106.9thefan.com or on the 106.9 The Fan mobile app, you can take your radio with you if you're not within the regular bounds of a radio broadcast signal. You can still stream it wherever you may be, and tune into the national broadcast of the Utah State Aggies as they take on Purdue. And as soon as the game is over, they'll be back on with Al Lewis and John Russell, comments from the coach and players, and breaking down what happened in the second round of the NCAA Tournament in Indianapolis. Well, Jason, thanks for hopping on a special NCAA Tournament podcast on the Full Court Press, and enjoy the rest of your time in Indianapolis. Hopefully you're coming home with the team celebrating a Utah State victory.
Yeah, it would be. And, well, heck, if the Aggies win, then they'll be taking a short pit stop in their next destination, because I think if they win, they go to Detroit, don't they?
I think you're right. I think that is the next spot in their pod.
Yeah. That's where my connecting flight comes out of. So
that's true.
Take a quick stop, say hello to Detroit, and if they win, I'll be like, I'll be back. But yeah, that'll be an interesting flight home. But we'll see how things go.
All right, we'll be back Monday, but with lots of coverage on Sunday, and then we'll be back on the air on Monday with a full edition of the Full Court Press. Thanks for tuning in and being part of our special podcast, Utah State and Purdue. A lot more audio on our podcast feed from Utah State and Purdue. Media availability on Saturday, and we'll see what happens. 12:40 tip Mountain Time between the Aggies and the Boilermakers.